Welcome to another episode of the Libertarian Movie Club. Today I'm with Stephen Kent, who wrote a book and talks about Star Wars. And we're going to talk some more Star Wars today. So, Stephen, how you doing?
Books and Star Wars. That is my life these days. Caleb, nice to talk to you.
Good to talk to you too. So, you wrote a book. What was it called again?
Yeah, it's called How the Force Can Fix the World, Lessons on Life, Liberty, and Happiness from a Galaxy Far, Far Away. Kind of my love letter to the politics of Star Wars and what it means to me.
I love that title. I absolutely love that title.
Thank you. It went through many iterations. It was originally How the Force Can Fix America, but the publisher, they always have ideas about, well, we want to make sure that it appeals to as many people as possible. There are Star Wars fans in every country in the world. And I was like, well, we're kind of taking a big task if we say the Force can fix the world.
Yeah,
maybe it could fix America.
Maybe. I mean, I'm of an opinion America's pretty beyond fixing it at this point, but
yeah.
So what was the inspiration for this book? Like what was the story behind it? We just watching Star Wars one day and was like, that's a book. Or do you have like some ideas behind it? Like what was the story behind the book?
Yeah. So I host a podcast called Beltway Banthas. It's a Star Wars and politics podcast I launched in 2016 with the sole purpose of talking to people on the left and the right, both about their love of Star Wars and then trying to understand how they share moral values and virtues on both sides of this divide, because Star Wars means the same things to both of them. And Star Wars means what it means. It's a story of courage, of empathy, humility, free will, balance as a virtue, redemption being something that is real. So how could people sort of both love Star Wars, both have it matter to them on a deep moral level, but also then go out into the world and act differently politically. So the podcast was dedicated to understanding that divide, understanding why Star Wars helps bring people together. And I did the show for 4 years. I'm still doing it. But I eventually just was like, this is a book idea. Like the things that we've talked about on this show with guests ranging from Glenn Beck to Van Jones, it proves that there's something here, that Star Wars provides us like a textbook way to live, like the Bible might, right? Like there are 10 commandments of the Bible. There are commandments of Star Wars. And
I've made the parallel that Star Wars is modern day mythology for most people.
Absolutely.
If people want to know what a hero is, well, Luke Skywalker is a go-to example for a lot of people. I mean, he was, and then they did it in the sequels, but I don't want to get into that.
No, we can get into that.
I don't want to.
Heroes fall down. Fall down.
I'll start ranting because I'll start comparing them to the Swan books that came out, and I'm just like, there's books, and then I don't want to get into that nerd thing. I start ranting about it all again, but I'm happy to do that for you all. The chapter I read, because you still know about chapter, was on redemption of heroes or villains. Mm-hmm. Redemption of villains turning heroes, and the point you made about no Star Wars fan ever really sat down and went, well, Darth Vader deserved what he got. We all kind of like. I wonder though, do you think people do that now because of the prequels exposing his backstory, or think everyone was like that in the original trilogy as well?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really interesting phenomenon, and I think our increasingly unredemptive culture that we live in today is a part of it. But I go to Comic-Cons today, and I've been to and sat on and viewed panels about whether or not Darth Vader's return to the light is somewhat problematic, whether or not it is, a forgiving of space Nazis for their sins without them having to atone or pursue redemption, forgiveness, or bringing light back into the world. This is not a discussion that I feel like ever happened in fandom pre the 2010s. And I think it reflects something that has changed in the heart of our people, which is that we have an increasingly complicated relationship today with whether or not people can right the wrongs that they have put out into the world. I think cancel culture is kind of like ground zero of where this thing is happening. But, I was increasingly and very concerned when the sequel trilogies were playing out that Kylo Ren was going to get railroaded in the end into, either just remaining a villain or dying a bad guy, because of the way that our culture is now. Is like, is Disney going to actually drink from the fountain of cancel culture and buy into all these like far left fans' ideas about space Nazis not being able to come back to the light? They made the right choice in the end.
I do have an issue with the whole Vader saying, like, I don't mind him coming back to the light. I think that was a good character arc. I think that was good. Saving his son, killing Emperor Palpatine. I think those were all good points. My issue with him is becoming a Force ghost.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I don't think one act undoes all the evil. And
Yes.
the Force ghost is if we look at it, it's a positive afterlife.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if he is deserving of a positive afterlife. I think he did good in the end, but is it enough good to override all the bad?
So
That's
I think what you're describing, what I think you're describing is, I don't mean to like slander it, but like a common misperception of what the Force ghost phenomenon is. I think a lot of us tend to look at Force ghosts strictly through the lens of the Judeo-Christian lens, right? That we look at
Catholic libertarian, so
yeah. We look at Force ghosts and sort of like myself as a Presbyterian, we go, life after death, eternal life. You are sort of like living on the right side of your moral history, right? Mm-hmm. But that's not actually what Force ghosting in Star Wars canon is shown to be about. George Lucas takes much more of the element of the afterlife in his story building, and this is shown out mostly in the Clone Wars TV series that takes place before Episode 3. The Hindu idea of sort of extending your life beyond death. The Force ghost phenomenon.
Supposedly going to explore more of that in the Kenobi show with Qui-Gon's in, so everyone how to do it.
I truly hope so. It's going to be brilliant.
If they do that so right, it's going to be the best Star Wars show yet. Like, there's so much potential there. It's like
we need to know about how Obi-Wan sort of practiced the craft of becoming a Force ghost in the desert, and bringing in Qui-Gon would just be perfect. But Qui-Gon was the first Jedi, and people often miss this, the first Jedi to crack the code of life after death in the Force ghost form. This is an incredibly new innovation as far as the arc of the Jedi's history goes. Yeah. And it does not come. It doesn't come from virtue. It comes from conquering your shadow. And there are only a handful of Jedi who have been able to actually witness what their shadow is, know their shadow, and then conquer their shadow. And Anakin Skywalker, he became Darth Vader. He became his shadow. And then he managed to still choose the other path, which means that he knows the full extent of his being, which is why he transcends into being a Force ghost.
So I know the lore of Force Ghost, not as in detail as you, obviously, but I know a little bit of it. My question is, how much of that was post-production? Because I don't think he had a lot of Force Ghost lore built in. So it's like, at the time, like, knowing the lore of the Force Ghost, I can see that being a saving grace of the Vader redemption arc. Yes. But going into it, not knowing the lore, it's very easy to see in the Judeo-Christian framework where this might be a bad act. Now, I'm not sold on either side of it because I like Anakin. You know, I mean, I did an episode earlier this week on my Star Wars series, that how Anakin really is a victim of everything. I mean, he was a victim of circumstance, of propaganda, of indoctrination to the Jedi Order, of Palpatine's mind games. I mean, he was a victim of everything. And that I don't blame Anakin for too much. But also because I think I really do like the Clone Wars, and I think they did him justice there.
Yeah, it's one of those things where a lot of Star Wars can go back and really like fill in the gaps to try to explain everything that was done in the 70s and the 80s to make it all make perfect sense. And they absolutely do that. I do think it's worth considering two things, which is one, that again, sort of the Judeo-Christian bias looking at that Force ghost in the 80s, like the Return of the Jedi, you just sort of assume a certain thing. But George Lucas has always been very emphatic about the different ways in which he cobbled together sort of the Jedi philosophy with a huge focus on Buddhism and Hinduism. Yeah. I think that element of it was always baked in from the beginning, but it really, really needed to be answered exactly how Anakin Skywalker not just is reborn after his death as Darth Vader, but how he becomes a certain version of himself. And that kind of goes to the divide over whether or not it should have been the older actor, right? The old guy from the special editions, or Hayden Christensen. And it kind of all comes down to, when did Anakin Skywalker spiritually die? And I think that's a really interesting question. I'm a prequel kid. I believe he died on Mustafar. So
see, I would have picked the moment he kneeled before Palpatine and became Darth Vader. Like that would have been my moment. The name symbolized the death of the old, the bringing in the new.
It's a ritual. The
ritual. So this people hate on the prequels more than they should. I think there's enough there, especially with episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. I think that one has so much there that you can watch, and that's like the message and story of episode 3 is so good. Even if that's some of the stunt work between Mace Windu and Palpatine is somewhat lacking, but the story of episode 3, and if you watch that and then go watch the Clone Wars and watch it again, because you're gonna love it.
Yeah. And I think one of the reasons that I just really wanted to write a chapter on redemption was because a lot of the discourse in our country today, you hear a lot about, like, for example, a racial reckoning, right? That we're having a reckoning across the country about our past. We have a very complicated history and a very complicated relationship with the demons of American history, and how we are relating to those demons and trying to overcome them is entirely our problem. We are choosing between a redemption or a reckoning, and the culture and the mainstream media, the cultural left in particular, they want a reckoning. They don't want to have a redemptive story where we are pursuing sort of a greater arc towards justice and knowing ourselves and then trying to do better as we go forward. We have a huge cultural problem with self-aggrandizement and sort of believing ourselves to be pure. I think like the cancel culture types, the left, they believe themselves to have achieved some sort of higher moral ground.
You see this heavily on both sides. I mean, when the left goes after cancel culture, it's always some famed sense of purity. You know, whereas like they even said like I admitted I'm racist. Like they have to admit, like some of these real critical race people admit they're racist, and it's like, wait, what?
Yeah, they like fall down on the ground and lash their backs like, we are all so racist. Please, and then on the right, forgive us.
And on the right, they're like they'll point out sins of people. Like I saw this today. A gay guy announced he's engaged, and his quote tweets were full of Christians just going after him. I'm like, he announced his engagement. This is not the time and place for this. Stop faming your moral superiority on a happy occasion.
Decency. No, I mean, I'm a libertarian, and one of my sort of radicalizing moments in becoming a libertarian was when I became a believer in the idea of criminal justice reform. And, you know, there is no greater proponent of the literal cancellation of human beings' lives than the law and order right, who, if you even talk to them about whether or not someone's sentence for their crime doesn't quite fit, right, that they shouldn't be doing 40 years for a drug crime where they happen to be carrying a pistol at the same time they were arrested, which, you know, really stacks the amount of time that you're going to do in prison. You go, there you go. Does the time fit the crime? And they go, well, don't do the crime if you can't do the time. And you go to like your conservative friends and you're like, yeah, but I'm saying, does the time fit it, right? Does this actually match? They don't want to talk about that. They don't want to talk about whether or not there is a case to be made for redemptive justice, whether or not there's to be a case to be made for people improving their lives outside of the prison walls rather than in them, where they become darker versions of themselves.
You should have heard the I like to stir the pot a little bit too much. During Thanksgiving dinner, I brought up saying you still lose your right to vote when you go after you get out of jail. We were all watching Fox News, and I just brought it up, and it's like, yeah, this is my problem.
Yeah, that will break the brains of our conservative friends if you tell them that you still have a right to vote even if you've committed a crime.
I love the point out that they quote the Constitution all the time. They bring up inalienable rights, and they're like, well, yeah, that's true, but unless you break the law, then it's not inalienable. I'm like,
yeah, right. And like you commit a drug offense and you no longer have Second Amendment rights, which is the inherent right to defend yourself from harm by other people. It's absolutely insane.
Every founder was wanted by the police.
Yeah,
every founder of America was by the police, and so they lose their rights now.
Literal
Obviously
criminals.
Not.
Literal criminals.
If they had lost, they'd be domestic terrorists. It's I'm a paleo guy. I like talking to the right more than the left, but sometimes it's hard.
Sometimes it can be a challenge, but
Hey,
that's kind of like where I really try to like always go back to Star Wars as the way that I try to communicate to people, because I really believe that the majority of people that you come into contact with on a daily basis are like either like big Star Wars fans or they like Star Wars. There's like 1 out of every 5 people that you'll ever meet who are like, yeah, I've never seen them or I don't care. Star Wars is a great way to talk to people about morality, light, dark, choices that you can make, whether or not the means justify the ends. Like this is kind of why I wanted to do this book, is to be able to improve ways to communicate with people politically.
No, speaking on Star Wars, I'm doing my months of Star Wars series, and it's been a blast. Like talking Star Wars and politics with all these people.
Yeah,
I'm really hoping to use it as a way to like people will come for Star Wars and they get the libertarian philosophy as a byproduct. I had Scott Holton on to talk about all the wars in Star Wars.
Oh, great!
It was we were only supposed to record for 30 minutes. We went for an hour.
Yeah.
We just kept going. It was so much fun. I lost my train of thought there. I was gonna say next week. You should check this out if you mind. You enjoy it. I'm having on a pacifist to talk about Star Wars, and then next I'm having on a guy who believes in the necessity of violence to talk about Star Wars.
Yeah,
so it's going to be a lot of fun to get both tracks. So let's talk some Star Wars nerd stuff.
Dualism.
let's talk some nerdy Star Wars. I followed the theory out in an earlier episode that there really are no good guys in the prequels. That every character in the prequels is either all the good guys are either clones who are programmed to follow orders, or they are ideologues who always do what they're supposed to do, follow the plan laid out as the bad guy. That no one makes any active good decisions besides Ahsoka and the Clone Wars, and every single character all the way to the end, maybe like the last 20 minutes of episode 3, does exactly as they're supposed to. And I have a very hard time saying drones are good guys.
Yeah. Well, I think it's interesting that you kind of point out like there's nobody good in the prequel era of Star Wars. And I think that really aligns with my view of the world, that we are not like enlightened beings, that a lot of human history is not the result of calculated decisions, reason, and logic, but humans blundering from one mistake and bit of hubris to the next, and we just miraculously managed to still survive as a species, despite our hubris, our ego, and all the mistakes we make. And I that's why I like Star Wars, because like, Star Trek has like this very enlightened view of humanity, that like we can overcome certain base elements of what holds us back as human beings. Star Wars is very real. It's that circular nature, the ring theory aspect of war after war after war, democracy, tyranny, that like
I did an episode on that.
Yeah. I mean,
the question was,
we're making it up as we go along. We're making it up as we go along.
It's just a quick diversion because you brought up Star Trek. Have you watched Star Trek DS9, or have you only seen the?
No, not so much. I'm a very passive consumer of Star Trek, so I can't comment much on it beyond why I just don't ever tend to like it.
Okay, well, I'm gonna give you a recommendation. DS9 on Netflix. They go to war, and they actually question. The captain has a speech about why the problem is Earth, because Earth is a utopia, and that mindset. Like it's easy to be a saint in paradise. It's his exact line.
Of course.
And he just hammers on the. I mean, I think I'm a Star Trek fan, but DS9 is the best. Back to Star Wars, because I don't want to get sidetracked into that.
Yeah, and I'm not a utopian, and that's part of my worldview is like that we're fallen, and you can look at that either religiously or just through being practical. There is no utopia, and everybody who's trying to build one, whether it's the libertarians talking about their commune lifestyle or the socialists talking about the communes that they want to build, they're all going to devolve into tyranny at some point or another, because humans like strong men, and that's how you get Palpatine. And you'll always have a Palpatine. It's just whether or not you can recognize who they are in your life.
You're always going to have hierarchies. You're always going to have a circulation of elites.
Yeah.
This is Pareto talked about. If you read the Machiavellian by James Burnham, Pareto talked about the circulation of the elites. And you can kind of see that in Star Wars. The elites were the Republic and the elites were the Jedi. And there was a circulation of the elites becoming the Emperor. And it became one elite with his few politicians, which he basically just didn't really do much. All the powers in the Emperor. To him being rotated out by the next set of elites, which was Mon Mothma, which was Leia,
and they just wanted their power back.
Yeah.
The Rebel Alliance were just a bunch of elites who lost their power, who would very much like to be in the seat of power and influence and wealth again. And I often try to make this argument just to remind people, like the rebellion, you can't just like look at them as, well, these are obviously the good guys. Well, they're people who had power and they lost it and they're not happy about that. And maybe they also have high-minded ideals about the way human freedom and liberty should function. I'm glad you mentioned the Jedi as elites, because they just should aggravate the heck out of anyone. It's when Qui-Gon goes to Tatooine and he says, we're not here to free slaves, to Shmi Skywalker. And you just have to pause and go, why not? And Anakin had that exact question his entire life. Anakin went through his entire life wondering, why were they not there to free my mother? They're not defenders of peace and justice. They're defenders of the Republic status quo. They're defenders of their power. And they like to think of themselves as enlightened, but they weren't. They were just elites.
So I always thought that if Palpatine's pitch to Anakin was that not just saving Padme, but like, hey, we're going to wipe out slavery, would have been a lot stronger of a pitch.
Yeah, he might have still gotten his claws into him that way.
Yeah, but like the fact that Qui-Gon seeded a game of dice to win Anakin, and it's like, I'm sorry, what are you using the Force to seed things? And you saw in the end that Grotto even admitted, I'm ruined, I'm broken. It's like, hey, he's ruined. Bio. It's like you have the opportunity. He didn't once go back. Obi-Wan no one ever saw. Let's go back and buy this person out of slavery. But like, I guess it was just the idea, like we already take the kids. The fact that they already take the kids from the parents, take them to the Jedi Temple. They're like, hey, this one's easy. We don't have to argue about it. We just gonna do it.
Yeah,
it's a really.
And Count Dooku understood this. Count Dooku, like these sorts of hypocrisies, these sorts of moral bankruptcies is what drove Count Dooku away from the Jedi Order. He had political disagreements with the way that the Jedi influenced the galaxy and the choices that they made to uphold the Republic rather than to uphold human dignity, freedom around the galaxy, and also just to practice the ways of the Force, right? Like not go around like being crusaders who free villages from every tyrant that might be afflicting them, but just from being enmeshed with the Force, studying its ways. He knew that it was a racket. And he believed very strongly that Qui-Gon would have left with him, which is what he tells Obi-Wan in Attack of the Clones. I sometimes wonder. I think he's
right. You see, Qui-Gon wasn't even on the council. He wasn't on the council. He kept going against the council's wishes because he going to train Anakin anyway.
Master, if you had just listened to the council, you'd be on. Exactly.
That's why I've always liked Qui-Gon. When I watch the prequels, I'm always
favorite.
That's my guy.
Yeah, he's my favorite Jedi.
I really hope he's in that TV show they're making, because that's gonna be so good. Yeah, I actually did an episode. I did a lot of episodes of Star Wars already, but we did an episode on Jedi versus Sith. Was any of them actually good? And that was the question we asked. It was fun. Let's talk more about the rebellion going against the Empire. You brought the rebellion might not be good guys. They were just elites who lost their power, wanted more power back. They did not always work with the most weapable, I can't say that word, of characters. Like, I mean, Cassian Andor from the Rogue One Rogue One movie straight up started doing the back because he couldn't climb a wall.
Yeah.
I mean, he had to, I guess, but like they're not necessarily the High Republic of good guys.
Right. And they try to be, and I think, Cassian Andor is kind of one of those, I think, good examples of like in a war and in kind of doing like counterintelligence and an insurgency against an empire, you're going to have to smash a couple of eggs here and there. And that poor guy who couldn't climb the wall was definitely one of the eggs that got smashed. But there's one of the chapters that I really zero in on in my book about this is the chapter on hope and the way in which you fight. And Rogue One is exactly the example of where this decision is made for the Rebel Alliance. And it's also very present in Star Wars Rebels, the animated series. Are you going to join with Mon Mothma, or are you going to join with Saw Gerrera? It's really the same choice of whether or not you're going to participate in democratic politics or if you're going to put on a black mask and go join Antifa. One represents a belief that you can organize and persuade people to your points of view and then enact change. And the other is a belief that it is all bankrupt. There is no hope. So the only thing left to do is throw bottles and burn things down.
I'm not all I don't know if I'd say it's in Star Wars, yes it is. I'd say in actual life is just really three categories. I'm trying to work on the names for this because I say there's black pill, there's white pill, and there's for the future. But when it comes to political strategy, there's we could vote our way to a better society and we could use the democratic system to make it better, or we have to tear everything down. And I think there's a midpoint there where it's like, okay, the system's obviously rigged. Let's play the game and use the powers that be. You know, I'm much more in that middle camp where it's like, let's play the game, but we know how it's played. So let's, if it's who I think it was Popular Liberty. He said, if pot isn't off for sale, why don't we buy some?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
I'm trying to remember which some libertarian on Twitter had like this super viral post about like why libertarians need to be engaging in politics by sort of like taking over both the Democratic and the Republican Party. Cause it's like, that's the way the game is played. I actually really believed in that. And I thought that he made a really great point. I can't remember the exact account, but you know,
There's so many good people on Twitter. It's hard to keep track of them all.
Point being, you know, like, yeah, black pill, white pill are working through the system. We have a lot of black pill politics these days, which is nihilism, right?
Yeah.
The system doesn't work, burn it down. The Black Lives Matter protests of 2020, as well as the Antifa riots throughout Portland, Seattle. That's black pilling. The January 6th riot at the Capitol building is black pilling. It's a belief that we no longer can abide by the rules of this order, of this system. Yeah. Something else has to happen. And I'm sorry, the only thing that happens in situations like that is people get hurt, hearts get broken, and we set ourselves back as a actual democracy. And it's not the way to go. We have a better way. It's the Princess Leia way, and it's hope.
A new hope. Well, I would say I haven't watched a lot of your podcasts. I've watched some of the podcasts. I've not watched a lot. I went back to the beginning, tried to get caught up. And I was like, I'm not going to make it caught up in time.
Yeah, so I just there's so much. Yeah, you should start from where we are now and then work backwards from there.
Kind of get a refresh of politics. Like, I forgot about that moment in politics. There's so much because, like, you know, we live in a 12-hour news cycle now. Like it's an hour. Okay, let's play a game. Let's play a fun game. What president in the past 40 years is most like Palpatine?
What president in the past 40 years is most like Palpatine? All right. Well, I automatically do reject the idea that it's Trump. You know, for me, it's like one of those, like you're either like a hammer or a scalpel kind of things. Palpatine is a scalpel. Yeah. Trump is a hammer. So it's not him. You know, yeah, these are always so tough. Going back, so you got Reagan, you got Jimmy Carter. It's not anybody before then. I mean, I don't want to throw it right at the feet of Bush, but like there's an element of like the Bush thing, which is kind of baked into the prequels that you just can't get away from. Bad thing happens to us on 9/11. We have to make a choice about what kind of country we're going to be from now on. And the choice that we make is we're never going to be afraid again. We're going to launch a war on terror. And it doesn't matter how many men, women, children, and babies are going to have to die in countries that we've never been to in our lives. Another American will never fear for their lives again. And there's an element
phrasing too, like that war on terror. It's like
war on terror. Give me a break. Give me a break. It's such a shoddy idea. But the thing about like the Bush analogies, it doesn't quite work because Palpatine was a popular guy. Bush was not popular. Obama was popular. And if Obama decided to do something like that, the media would have applauded all the way to the end. So then you would have possibly gotten your benevolent dictatorship.
Dude, the media around Biden is just absolutely hilarious. Like I watched today. He was test driving that new Ford electric truck. He has the wheel all the way pulled to the right, and the vehicle is still going straight. And you can see there's another guy in the passenger seat. He's moving his hands around like this. He's on a steering wheel.
Well, one case I would make, it's one of those things where it's too soon to tell, right?
Mm-hmm.
But one case that you could make for Biden as Palpatine is that Palpatine was a statesman, a guy who's been in the system for a long time. He had a reputation as being someone who believed in the process, believed in the Senate. Nobody believes in the Senate more than Joe Biden. He's somebody who you believe him to be very much invested in the system, in democracy, in the separation of powers. But you really just got to scratch your head at some of the things that have gone on during this pandemic and the breaches that have come right out of the Biden administration, like the eviction moratorium. Just the idea that a pandemic, people getting a cough and getting hospitalized is the reason that we're going to do away with property rights around the country. It's absolutely insane. And I don't mean to diminish the amount of people that have actually died from COVID, but we're a long way away from when we didn't have vaccines to actually help people get through this stuff. COVID is not a life-threatening illness at this point for people who get the vaccine. And they're still using this as a reason to strip away the right of people to manage their own properties. I'm pretty stunned, honestly, that Joe Biden is somebody who is allowing that kind of overreach by a bureaucratic organization like the CDC to happen. So my trust in him is very much faltered. So there's the case for Biden Palpatine.
Yeah. Now, my answer was the head of the CIA because he's the guy who wants everything.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's really no good answer because it's like say what you want about Palpatine, but at least he was effective. I can't think of a single politician who's actually been effective.
Yeah, and the thing about Palpatine is it has to be, you always have to take a step back from your political BS and be willing to tack it on to people who are on your side. And there are not, most partisans are not willing to go, what if my guy's Palpatine? What if my guy's power hungry? What if my guy is the person who is actually looking to climb to the top, dismantle the order so that they can be in power forever? It's absurd to believe that it's only ever going to be the other guy's team who's going to try to have.
Listen, all you got to do is vote with the people have an R next to their name and all the problems magically get fixed. That's all it is. Just
human nature solved.
It's all exactly. Yes, you vote for the Pope and everything's better. Things I've heard said in my church, vote for the Pope, but he make him president. I'm like, go away. I don't want to talk to you. I'm out.
If men were angels, we wouldn't need government, but they're not.
I'm guessing you're more libertarian than how to put this. More Hayek than Rothbard, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I think so. I'm not as probably well read on all the great thinkers as you are. But
I've only read a quarter of those books, and none of them are the libertarian ones. They're all the Star Wars books on the bottom.
Yeah, no, I think I would say that I come from more the Hayekian school, and I just say that because the place where I really formed a lot of my libertarian views is actually around the orbit of Charles and David Koch. That's where a lot of my politics were formed, is in the halls of the Charles Koch Institute. And Rothbard is not on the walls of that building. No. Hayek is. Yes.
Yeah. I came through everything through YouTube and Twitter, and so I'm much more of a Rothbard.
Rothbard, right?
I'm a Hoppian, straight up.
The rebels, the rebels, yeah. The Hayekians have their control over DC. Rothbard has control of the internet.
This is a Cato Mises kind of thing going on here. I should have put my hoodie on.
Yep. I love it. Join your team. No, I'm not. I need to understand your side of it better. And that's kind of where I'm just going to be humble and say, like, I don't understand much of the Mises caucus and Rothbard and what the big fault lines are between those sides. All I've kind of come up in is my side.
It's all just memes.
Whether or not you're good at memes.
That's my dividing line. Is like, it's the side that can make memes and the side that can't. Yeah, and that's the dividing line. There's a lot of other issues, but the main one you can notice right off the bat is who can make the memes.
Rothbardians are based.
I like to think we all. I have a bit of a bias, though. I'm actually after this month of Star Wars months, I'm doing a Hopper months, then a Token months, then a Rothbard months. It's gonna be a fun next few months of podcast. Anyway, back to Star Wars. We got a topic again. What's your favorite Star Wars movie? Like
Return of the Jedi.
My man. That is a good. I got Luke Skywalker's lightsaber.
Oh, hold on. We're gonna turn to green for Return of the Jedi. There we go.
Oh, hold on. I have some. What's some of these emotes do it?
Yeah. Hashtag ignite the green.
There we go. I got Luke's lightsaber. Return of the Jedi is without a doubt.
Where's mine? My Luke lightsaber's on the wall, but it's out of sight. Yeah, same one. Return of the Jedi is my favorite.
Nice. See, it's my I rank them. Excuse me. Return of the Jedi, Revenge of the Sith, Rogue One, Episode 5. And
Caleb Brown, you and I are like the same person because that's my top 3.
We're both men of excellent taste here.
That's my top 3: Return of the Jedi, Episode 3, Rogue One, and then everything else. They're always kind of changing places and order, right? I kind of I wake up some days and Episode 1 is really high up there, and then some days I wake up and it's not. But those 3 are set. So you and I are the same.
That's good. Those 3 are some solid movies. Now I got to ask you real quick. I ask everyone this: what was your opinion of Han Solo, the solo story they made?
Yeah. Oh, I'm so glad you asked that. Like fine wine, and that is to say, the first time I ever drank wine, I spit it out. And then, I tried it again a year later and I was like, this is relaxing. I feel calm and I feel warm. This isn't like drinking a beer where I feel farty, bloated, and, like I just want to go to sleep. And after a year, I went back and I watched Solo again and I was like, I don't know what I backlashed against. I don't know why I watched this and didn't like it. It's freaking amazing.
It is.
It's a great Star Wars movie. It's beautifully made. It's delicate. It approaches all the characters with incredible care. And Alden Ehrenreich, I'm going to say his name wrong, he did the impossible. He did the impossible, which is not blow being Han Solo while Harrison Ford is still alive.
Yeah.
And the fact that I get through the entire movie and I don't once think, where's Harrison Ford? That means that like this went pretty darn well. And I love the story.
Alden Ehrenreich is incredible. When he found out he was cast as Han Solo, he had no one around him in the city. So he just went on a Ferris wheel. That's all he did. No, he was so good as Han Solo that if ever we make Indiana Jones, I want him to play Indy. Like he is. If Harrison Ford gets, if any movie we make any Harrison Ford films, I want him. He nailed it. It was absolutely incredible.
Yeah, it really was. And it kind of goes without saying, a lot of the performances were just really, really stinking good. I'm very excited for the Lando spinoff series whenever that does happen. I'm very excited for it. But just more than anything, Star Wars under Disney has like a look and a feel. And Rogue One and Solo have a very particular look and feel. It's gritty, it's dark, it takes Star Wars incredibly seriously, like the animated series do on their best days. And you watch those movies and you go, these are freaking magnificent. And then you watch the sequels and you go, but what is this? And
it was
like,
so safe.
Yeah. And you go like, how did this come from the same production house? How does Rogue One, Solo, and The Mandalorian come from the same house as these 3 movies, which 7 and 9 are very, very safe. Episode 8 is ballsy, but looks like Rogue One and looks like Solo, but is just a very different kind of Star Wars story, as you and I both know.
8 was I have so mixed feelings about 8.
Well,
on one hand,
my least favorite Star Wars movie of all time, and I will say least favorite because I hate no Star Wars movie. I like all of them, but my least favorite is The Rise of Skywalker. I have very strong opinions about that stinking movie.
You like Last Jedi over Rise of Skywalker?
That's a false way to frame it. It's when you get into this debate online, you basically are arguing about like whether or not you are pro tradition or pro transgression. And people who say, well, they love The Last Jedi, they're emoting, well, I'm kind of liberal or libertarian. I love transgressing against tradition and norms. And people who support The Rise of Skywalker, they come out and they do it because it makes The Last Jedi people so angry. and because Rey and Kylo kissed and it sort of dismantled her feminism in a couple of ways. Look, for me, that movie was a cowardly film. The Rise of Skywalker. I thought they looked at the blowback that they got on The Last Jedi, put their tail in between their legs, and they were like, oh, okay, do you want Star Wars to be like a Marvel movie? Okay, here's this. And they made a movie that like artificial intelligence could have made possibly better. Whereas the Last Jedi gets a lot wrong. It's a movie that was made with intention and heart. And The Rise of Skywalker was made by cowards trying to placate people on the internet.
I don't disagree with anything he said. I think that's all a very accurate representation of what happened, probably. I defended episode 9 when it came out, and I said if they made a two-part movie, part 1 and part 2, instead of being a trilogy, it was 4 movies, and they gave J.J. Abrams time to actually work with it. It probably would have been much better. Because he had to come in and go, okay, well, I got to pick up from episode 7. I got to rewrite and rework rapid episode 8, but incorporate it and then continue.
It's impossible.
Like, you could have done it. This movie was not long enough.
I try to always have some grace. And it's just one of those things where at the very top level, this was mismanaged. And
Kathleen Kennedy.
Well, you know,
I blame her for everything.
I know. Well, you can't do that though, because Kathleen Kennedy signs off on Rogue One, off on Solo, on The Mandalorian.
She signs off on
all these other things that are great. But then the sequel trilogy just doesn't make sense.
Well, she signed off on those, but she was more involved in the sequel trilogy, I think. That's my personal theory.
According to YouTubers who have an axe to grind, like, you know, I'm sorry, but like nothing gets by the person who is like the president of the production house at Lucasfilm. She's involved in all this stuff.
Did you know when Jon Favreau wanted to make Mandalorian, he had to go talk to George Lucas about the Baby Yoda stuff? Because apparently George Lucas had a thing about when they made the Clone Wars, I don't want anyone revealing Yoda's backstory or Yoda's secrets. Like he was very clear about in the books and everything, never explore Yoda. You want mystery around Yoda. So Jon Favreau was like, hey, I'm making a show. I want to miss Yoda. Guy got okay. And George was like, yeah, go ahead. And
that's great that they respect the maker, you know?
Oh, yeah.
You got to respect the maker.
The mixed feelings around Lucas when it comes to fans. I don't know why people don't like him. How do you dislike Lucas when he created all of this?
Oh, he raped my childhood with Jar Jar Binks. You know,
have a side who was out just man.
Well, it all goes back to, and you can connect the dots here between the commentary in the early 2000s to the commentary now about Kathleen Kennedy and Disney, which is people look at George Lucas, they did look at George Lucas and Disney both as raiders, as pillagers of things that are sacred to them, taking advantage of something that is sacred and means a lot to them. George Lucas, there was this moment, remember, like where they're like, oh, all he cares about is making toys and creating new spinoffs and making these prequels to keep selling more action figures. When he always had a story to tell. He just wanted to tell more of his story and do it completely independently. And Disney is viewed absolutely the same way, as an outside pillager. And George Lucas has even said as much himself, which is an interesting wrinkle to it. So, you know, it's all one of those things. It's like the Protestant Reformation. It's like, who gets to decide who God is and who gets to talk to God? And God in this analogy
as a Catholic, it's the Pope.
Is it the Pope or is it, you know, just every Christian out there in the Protestant tradition? There's a legitimacy crisis that is always involved with whoever's in charge of Star Wars, which is people's religion.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, if America has a sad, I can't remember who it was, but someone's like, everyone in America was raised in a Judeo-Christian culture. That's unavoidable. I mean, it really is. It permeates our culture. But just on that same level, Star Wars. I mean, people know Jesus and Yoda. Those are names everyone knows.
Yeah, my book
it's
opens up with talking about how Star Wars is sort of the cultural commons.
Mhm.
And I think the exact example that I give is you would have a better chance of talking to your tax accountant about Boba Fett than you would the history of Thomas Jefferson, or you would have a better chance connecting with a person at the bar over anybody in the Skywalker family versus any of the founding fathers. And I just say that because, like, you try to talk to people about like where on the map is Kentucky, and most people get it wrong.
That's the problem. You talk to people. That's not what you talking to people is. That's old news. You make memes nowadays. Okay, man.
Memes is
That's
how
what the
we
future
communicate.
is. You memes and then you block people. That's the only thing you do.
Enlightened beings we are.
Yes, we are. I've learned on this point on Twitter. I'm very heavy with that block button. The moment I see someone, it's like, nope, I don't want to deal with this. I'm out. So back to the book real quick. So I lost track of time here, but back to the book. What was you said you had a publisher? What was that experience like? Because I love to interview authors and talk about that. So what was that like?
Yeah, so I came up with the idea for the book, How the Force Can Fix America at the time. And I went out and got advice from a friend who happened to work at the Charles Koch Institute about how to actually sell a book. Do it the right way, go to a publisher, get in one of the major publishing houses, and then have your book appear on every store in the country that will pick it up. And they reminded me, or not reminded me, counseled me at the very beginning, do not write the book. If you're writing nonfiction, you never write the book. You write a proposal for the book. It's 20 pages, roughly. It's an outline of the book. You're writing the skeleton, and you write one single chapter. And I wrote one single chapter on why Padme and Christ tell us like the story of how to be humble and what humility should be. So I kind of weave together this chapter, about Christ and Padme and humility. And I put that all together in a book proposal, and I go and find an agent, a literary agent, and you sign with an agent who believes in the idea of the book. And then the agent takes the book proposal and they go to the publishing houses and try to sell the idea. And so they pitch it to this house, and that house. And then, somebody hopefully says, okay, we like this book. We will buy it. We'll give you this much money, and then you owe it to us in 1 year. And after someone has bought the book, the idea for the book, then you got to write it. And so that was a process of getting into different publishing houses, kind of having them bid against each other on the idea. A couple places liked the idea, which is really stinking cool. And I'm just feeling, I'm just still glowing that it actually became real. And then cool. they give you a due date. They're like, all right, can you have it to us by June 2021? And I'm like, ooh, maybe. And then you got to get to work.
When is it? Is the book already out, or when's it coming out?
October 26th. So October it is headed to the printers right now.
That's gotta be a cool feeling.
It really is. It really is.
So
I'm currently working right now on just trying to get people excited about the idea of how the Force can fix the world. And it comes out in October, and I'm just going to go pound the pavement and try to tell people about it.
Man, I want to have you back on when the book is fully out. And I read the whole saying. I want to have you back on to talk about the book again, because the chapter I read, I was interested in. And I'm like, I want more. I want to read the rest of it. I want to hear all of it.
Great.
I'm currently working on a book. I'm going the ebook route. I'm just going to put out chapters in ebook and then put the hosting out together as one full book.
Yeah.
It's my strategy.
Yeah. And it's one of those things where if you can, at least on like a self-released ebook, really try to drive anybody who's downloading or reading that thing to sign up for an email newsletter where you can build an email list. One of the really big crucial parts of getting a book deal is being able to sell. I can get this many people to pre-order the book when it is up. And so if you have a huge Twitter following, a YouTube following, or an email list that is a couple thousand people deep, that's a huge selling point to a publisher. So if you do a self-release book, try to get people to buy in on an email list so that you can then one day maybe try to sell a book the traditional way, if that's something that's interesting to you.
I'll keep that in mind. We are running out of time, sadly. I've lost track of time. It's been a lot of fun. Plug all your stuff, and I got one more question for you when you're done plugging your show and your book and everything else.
Yeah, well, my name is Stephen Kent. You can follow me on Twitter at Stephen_Kent89. You can also watch my TV show / podcast on YouTube at youtube.com/rightlyaj. It's a conservative and libertarian talk show. I think all of y'all will very much like it. And of course, you can check out the book. It's called How the Force Can Fix the World. It is currently up online at Barnes and Nobles, Amazon, IndieBound, wherever you might get books. Go ahead and get a copy, and you'll get it in the mail the very end of October in time for Halloween.
Okay, awesome. And last question. Lightsaber color. If you were Jedi or Sith, what lightsaber color? Green?
Green, all the way. Ignite the
Same
green.
here, dude. When I
Yep.
played Star Wars: The Old Republic, I always went, even if I was playing the Jedi Knight or Sin Jedi, I always got green lightsabers. I always bought those crystals.
Always green. It's one of those things where you just know. You just know.
You just
And
know.
I knew I was a green lightsaber person from my childhood whenever Luke ignited that thing. And then when I fell in love with Qui-Gon, I really knew that I was a green lightsaber person. So
My three favorite Jedi's: Luke Skywalker, Qui-Gon, Kit Fisto.
there you go.
There's something there about the green lightsabers, man. Okay.
Ignite
Well,
the
everyone,
green.
this has been a lot of fun. This has been the Libertarian Movie Club talking about Star Wars, and Libertarian Book Club talking about a book. So it's the best of both worlds. Please subscribe, like the video, share the video, hit the notification bell. It's YouTube law that I say all those things. I'm sorry. May the force be with you.